Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. We have so much to get to from what was an incredible weekend of hoops with the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight going on. Of course, the Final Four now set, but no more ACC teams in the bracket. We might as well turn our attention to spring football here full time. But the good news is we have coaching searches. We have NC State, we have North Carolina. Those coaching searches very much heating up after the incredible drama that has honestly played out in the NC State world of things. And of course, in North Carolina working through their coaching search as well. So we are happy to have you guys with us. We'll have James Fletcher of On3 join us in just a few minutes to break down the NCAA tournament action from the weekend, including Duke's heartbreaking loss at the buzzer to UConn. Just another disappointing outcome for the Blue Devils in March Madness. We'll talk about that, what it means for them, and then move on to Boston College, finalizing their hire of Luke Murray, a UConn assistant who's got another Final Four trip ahead for him. He brings a lot of winning ways, and of course, a very famous family member to Boston College as they look to hit the reset on their program after Earl Grant was let go. So we have a lot to talk about on this edition of the podcast. We'll also wrap things up with some spring game takeaways from Clemson. We'll look back on the Tigers and how things played out there for Dabo Swinney and company, as their spring game was early, to say the least. I've been doing this a long time. I know different programs operate at different timelines and speeds and things like that, but there's very few programs that have their spring game before the month of April even begins. So excited to be here with you guys on my son Jack's second birthday. We got him off to school. He's got a little pizza party, ice cream going on later today at his school. So a happy second birthday to my son, and very happy to have you guys hear more about our friends at Security National Bank. Security National Bank is our partner for the Monday show. They continue to give that family feel, that family attention that you want in a banking partner. That is what they bring to the table. That is what they promise, because they know that as your business or as your personal finances grow, there's still going to be that need for a strong relationship, a strong foundation. And their people are what make them an incredible banking partner. So make sure you guys can consider them. Go to securitynational.bank for more information on what they can do for you, all their different services, or pick up the phone and give them a call, 402-344-7300. They are opening here just very shortly, I believe, in about 20 minutes. So their phone lines will be open starting at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. So hope you guys check out our friends at Security National Bank and all they do in the banking space. They're incredible partners for us, and we appreciate them. This weekend was just a really outstanding round of college basketball games, as the Sweet 16 whittled down to the Elite Eight, and now the Elite Eight is a Final Four headed to Indianapolis for this year's championships. And, UConn getting it done, advancing past Michigan State to face off against Duke, and just found a way. Braylon Mullins, a historic shot, a moment with the steal and the turnover by Caden Boozer that led to the shot. And there's a lot of instant reaction that goes out on Twitter, but I am in the corner where you're seeing a moment in time unfold that will be remembered in NCAA tournament lore. I mean, there's no question about it, especially if UConn goes on to win. But I think one of those way early, not memories from me, but highlights that you watch is just a Havlicek stole the ball type of moment. I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, the turnover, you're not expecting it. Duke doesn't really have to do anything other than hold it and maybe get fouled, or maybe do this or maybe do that. But Caden Boozer tries to make a play. It gets tipped, it gets deflected, and then it ends up back to UConn, and they're able to basically run their offense for a split second and get an extra pass off to Braylon Mullins, who hits the three from the logo and sends UConn to the Final Four. Just incredible. You feel for Duke. Another disappointing outcome. I think I saw some incredible tweet about John Shire, and I think he's in a class with like Bobby Knight and Dean Smith as far as fastest to X number of wins uh, before 40 and things like that. But it, it these last two NCAA tournaments have to have Duke fans, I would say, without a doubt, pissed, disappointed. But you have to at least start to say, okay, why are we not advancing to where we need to be? Why are we not advancing with a lottery pick like Cameron Boozer? And you saw the way Caleb Foster returned and Pat Ngungba was back and all of those things, but it wasn't able to still get you to where you want to be. And I think that's worth questioning now without saying, okay, we got to blow it up and do something totally different, because John Shire's been incredible in a sense. But these NCAA tournament losses that Duke has suffered, they have to find a way to get over the hump. There's way too high of expectations there for them in Durham and what they have year in, year out as far as a roster goes. And I'll be interested to get James Fletcher's opinion on that, as we'll break down Duke a little bit and what's next for them. But the rest of the Final Four set. Illinois advances past Iowa. What a fun story Iowa was to get past Nebraska and advance and beat Florida and do all those things. They end up losing to Illinois in what was not really a competitive game in a sense, but Illinois is just playing some great ball right now. And then out of the other side of the bracket, you get the two number one seeds, Arizona and Michigan, lining up to face off in what is going to be a monster matchup there in Indianapolis in the Final Four between those two great programs, as Arizona was able to take care of business against Purdue, and then Michigan the same against Alabama. That game was competitive for a while. I watched a lot of the Michigan-Alabama game, and then it was just too much Michigan. And if you're asking me to repick now a national champion, I kind of lean towards Michigan. I think they're just headed down this road of maybe team of destiny type of situation, but we'll see. Arizona would be looking to buck a trend that I believe goes back 20 plus years now, and no one west of Texas basically has won a national championship. It's been a long, long time. So Arizona is fighting not only for themselves, their fans, their program, but they're fighting for the entire western side of the United States in college basketball going into this one. So lots to break down as the Final Four has arrived. This is the kickoff of really one of the great stretches of sports. You've got the Final Four, both the men's and women's. You've got some spring football going on. NHL playoffs are rapidly approaching. You've got NBA playoffs rapidly approaching. And then you have the Masters next week. And golf is starting to hit its stride. So a great time of year for sports and some patio watching, in my case, for sports. And look, somebody who has by far watched plenty of sports, and in particular college basketball this month, our guy, James Fletcher, who joins us now on All Access AM. James, how you doing, man? Happy Monday.
Doing good. Happy to be part of this. Happy to finally be getting over some illness from last week that made it a little bit harder to watch all that basketball, but fighting through. It's much easier to fight through when your job is watching sports than it is to do plenty of other things, I'm sure.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you're just, everybody's playing hurt this time of year, right? For college basketball. So you're no different. You're just in it. You're in the grind. And the meat grinder of this NCAA tournament chewed up and spit out Duke as they got bounced from the tournament over the weekend. UConn Duke, a classic game there in the Elite Eight. 73-72 goes the way of the Huskies, as Dan Hurley and company, they get it done. Let's start there. Your takeaways from Duke with another disappointing finish to their season and falling short of the expectations.
Yeah, I think this is unfortunately the big takeaway, the big kind of conversation point that's going around, at least when I'm talking to some people this morning and late last night, is that this is going to become the John Shire storyline. It's going to be whether or not he can get it done. And that's not necessarily to say that he's not the level of coach that we've thought he was, or that he can't take this Duke program to one or multiple national championships during his tenure. It just means that we're all looking around saying, you had Cooper Flagg, you've had Cameron Boozer, and you couldn't get the job done. And fair or not, we know how difficult it is to win the NCAA tournament. There's going to be people, particularly in a Duke program, that's already going to bring out the haters across college basketball, that's going to have a certain percentage of the population rooting against it from start to finish. Now that you've given them some ammunition, they're going to fire back at you. And so for Jon Scheyer, it's about building this up and getting that job done. Like I said, we've seen other coaches take some time to get it done before. Even Mike Krzyzewski, it took him 11 years at Duke. Of course, he was building it a little bit more up from the ground than what Scheyer is, but took him that much time to get his first national championship with this program. You look at Bill Self at Kansas, it took him a minute to get things going. John Calipari, it took him multiple stops to get that first national championship under his belt. So I don't think that this is any kind of demerit on Scheyer, but I do think that it's going to start to be out there. You're going to hear it more and more throughout the next season, throughout the Final Four this year. Is Jon Scheyer able to get it done? Can he win something? Because he's had 2 rosters in a row here that have looked more than capable, and he hasn't gotten it done.
And they were up 15 at the half. I believe, NCAA tournament seeds, were something like 134-0 when leading at the half, and now there's a lone loss up there. It was some incredible stat about number 1 seeds, and does that win loss? It's still going to be evaluated harshly, especially with a loss. But does that pour gasoline on the fire, you think, from a national conversation?
I think it definitely does. It's one of those historic data points that you can always point to. They're really there in pretty much every game if you sort the data the right way. But anytime you can present that at the end of something, you're going to have more conversation around it. And so for them to blow that lead, really, I didn't feel that they necessarily blew it in some kind of dramatic fashion, at least the lead, getting down to what it was. It felt more like UConn had gotten into a rhythm. Duke was holding on. They were doing what they could, and UConn just caught the right runs. They caught the right shots in the right moments and were able to build that momentum and get that game close. Even that said, though, Duke did blow this game down the stretch, and it's very unfortunate. We've talked about the Boozer twins. They've been kind of the core of this team. Obviously, Cameron, the prospect expected to go high up in this draft. Caden had gotten much more love since the Caleb Foster injury. People saying, oh, he's not just the brother. He's not just somebody who's on this roster. He can actually do something. Unfortunately, he makes one bad read, one bad decision. He got sped up too fast. Didn't think through what the next step was, because if he holds on to that ball, you're talking about a really good free throw shooter going to the line with a lead, probably putting that game out of reach. And so Duke, even with those mistakes, they were in position to really take that one home, run down those final seconds. But you make one bad decision, and now the entire country is talking about you in a negative light.
And you look at the turnovers down the stretch that UConn was able to capitalize on. Let's give UConn their credit. Duke left the door open for them. They actually maybe opened the door for them, and UConn was able to capitalize. Dan Hurley, great staff over there. I want to get your thoughts on Luke Murray in just a second, but for Duke, this really isn't like a, oh my gosh, look at all the insane shots until the buzzer really that UConn made. Duke was turning the ball over. They were just not executing, and we've seen that down the stretch. That's kind of the way the UNC game, I think, played out earlier this year, the first time around. So they had some holes in their game. They weren't at 100%, but UConn was just so good and able to capitalize in the second half.
For sure. I think this Duke team, if they had a flaw, it was kind of getting it to the finish line, because this is the same formula, like you said, you pointed out there perfectly. North Carolina, it was really kind of the same thing. There wasn't just this big avalanche that came over. It was more, we're making more mistakes down the stretch than we should be. We need to clean this up. And then you didn't clean it up in time. And there's North Carolina. Now we're in a 1-possession game, and it got on the wrong side. We saw them also throughout the season kind of prevent things like that from happening in different points. It felt like maybe they had gotten over it when they played Michigan. They were able to hold them off, keep that gap, keep pushing it back out, and played a little bit cleaner brand. But of course, it does bite them again here. And so we'll see what next year looks like, because they've got a lot of really talented guys coming in. But do they have a Cam Boozer coming in? Are they going to be able to retain all of this talent that they have? You've got Pat Ngungba is a guy who's in NBA draft conversation, as is Isaiah Evans. We'll talk about Caleb Foster, I'm sure, in the offseason and what his plans are. Caden Boozer, you'd probably expect him to return, not a first round grade necessarily on him if he were to go to the draft, but it's going to be a new look roster as you're used to seeing with Duke. I do think they could get some retention here though, and that'd be really interesting with the another loaded freshman class that they have coming in.
Let's go to the Final Four. You've got UConn taking on Illinois. You've got Arizona taking on Michigan. What's your reaction to just this Final Four coming together and the way it all played out? All four of the teams, 3 seeds or better, are really, really talented and well, like the resumes are just elite for these programs that made it through to the Final Four.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch here because you have UConn against Illinois on one side, you got Arizona against Michigan on the other. And I think a lot of people are going to frame this as the national championship's actually going to happen in the Final Four. We know how strong Arizona and Michigan were all season. I wouldn't necessarily frame it that way. I do think that you look at that other side of the bracket. I think UConn, what more do you want them to prove? They just knocked off Duke. They just made a comeback against the number 1 overall seed. If you're going to rule them out just because the other 2 teams have been strong, well, then I'm not sure what UConn can do to convince you other than go on and win the national championship. Illinois on that side as well. Their offense is elite, has been historic throughout this year. It's been one of the best offenses that we've seen analytically in the history of college basketball. They are so efficient. They've got so many angles that they can score on you from. We know about Keaton Wagler, who has emerged into this NBA draft prospect. Andrei Stojakovic, who is not the same basketball player that his father was, but has his own abilities that have been just so efficient all season. David Mirkovic. You've got all the surrounding talent that just kind of fills the holes around those guys who do the bulk of the scoring for this team. And so we're going to see some interesting kind of stylistic battles here. UConn is going to really rely on the Terrace Reed on the interior with the point guard play of Silas Demery. Solomon Ball is also going to be on the ball quite a bit, getting things done there. Versus we're going to see this Illinois team just mentioned how they're going to spread the love. But on the other side of the bracket, that is the one that's going to get the most attention. Arizona with their star-studded freshmen, Koa Pete and Braden Burries. You surround that with some really good veteran talent in Jaden Bradley and Matthias Krivas. They've got it all. They are big and strong on the interior. They've got perimeter defenders who can really lock you down. I think that Ivan Karchinkov has been one of the most underrated players in college basketball. And so it's going to be interesting to see, can Michigan kind of go toe-to-toe? They have been the bigger team. They've been the more physical team just about everywhere they've been with that 3-man front court led by Yaxel Lindeborg with Ade Mara kind of anchoring things in the middle. This will be one of the few matchups in all of college where Ade Mara doesn't just tower over the opposing center. So we'll see how he matches up with Krivas. I think the point guard battle is going to be interesting. 2 veteran guys who know what they're doing. And then it'll come down to who can make the most shots, who can make the most plays between those 2. Very simple, but I think that these are 2 really, really extremely high-level teams. And so it's going to be one where you just kind of sit back and watch and let the better team win.
And we'll be watching it very, very closely, of course, those games kicking off on Saturday and Monday as a national champion will be crowned by a week from tonight, I guess. So exciting stuff there on the Final Four. James, I do want to get your take here on a couple of things in the coaching search realm. Luke Murray, hired at Boston College, a well-respected assistant for Dan Hurley as he takes over a BC program that needs some notoriety, needs some shots in the arm. And, with UConn, they're getting somebody who's experienced winning at a high level over there working for Dan Hurley. And, Murray is somebody who was with the team in DC, and it seems like he's going to, still be evaluated as far as if he'll end up coaching with UConn through the Final Four from what I've seen. But he's got a lot of work to do, and the portal's opening up, I think, a week from tomorrow. So what's your initial take on Luke Murray, the son of Bill Murray, coming in and trying to revitalize this BC program?
I think it's going to be really fascinating to watch. He's one of the top assistants in college basketball. I don't think there's really any kind of downside to this hire if you're Boston College. I think it was really a home run for them to get somebody who is thought of so highly around college basketball. I'm really interested to see the next step. It's going to be, what does Boston College do? Because you got in the door a guy who is going to command respect, who has been a very good recruiter at UConn, who has shown his X's and O's ability on that sideline, has gotten all kinds of praise across college basketball for every aspect of his coaching ability. So now, can you back him up? Do you give him the NIL resources? Do you give him the funding, the recruiting, the staff budget that he's going to need to drag Boston College up from where they are? Because this is not just a throw a little bit more money, give them a little bit more to kind of build this roster out, and boom, we're going to profit. No, you have got to make big strides, big investments just to get us to the NCAA tournament bubble. And at that point, then you worry about progressing forward. Do we then make more revenue? Do we get the fans in a little bit more, get more investment, get more alumni coming in and being part of this, feeling like they want to invest? Does that then get you to the point where you can build rosters that are perennial NCAA tournament contenders? There's a long road to travel here. They've got the first step, the first building block, but they've got to continue to invest at a high level if they're going to get the best out of him and get the best out of this program.
And what would you do if you were Luke Murray? Like, first steps, what do you have to accomplish here before the portal opens, or is it something during the portal, or what's your first move here?
I think that hiring your associate head coach and GM, those are the first steps that we see now. College basketball is run just a little bit differently. And so having a guy that you can trust to kind of manage the team while you're in that CEO role, having a guy that you can trust to manage all of the off the court stuff, the NIL, the transfer portal, who's in, who do we need to worry about replacing? Having people that can do those things, or at least help you with those things, takes so much off of your plate and provides you the ability to do the things that you know and run the ship in a clear-minded way. I think that that's the first step for him. And then, of course, hitting the transfer portal is going to be huge. This team needs more talent. They've got a couple of interesting pieces. We'll see if they're able to retain them, but they're going to need more talent. That's the very start of what they have to do if they want to compete next season in the ACC.
Breaking news into the podcast, and
Yes.
It is news that we have been expecting, and we'll let you go right after this, but NC State loses Will Wade to LSU. We could do a whole pod on that. It's a lot of fun to kind of talk about if you're an LSU fan, not so much about NC State, but NC State has its next head coach. The Wolfpack are pegging Tennessee assistant coach Justin Gainey to be the next head coach for the Wolfpack. He takes over a program that did go to the NCAA tournament, but has a lot of changes that need to be made, and they are bringing him in to replace Will Wade, somebody that, of course, has all the ties in the world to NC State, and they're looking to really jump this thing up a notch with Justin Gainey at the helm now.
Yeah, a program that he is, of course, familiar with, a program that is familiar with him. And so I think that it is a good fit in that way. You saw over the weekend, I mean, Rick Barnes raved about his ability, not just as a coach, but as a leader who's going to come in and really exemplify all the things that NC State was looking for when they hired Will Wade. And we'll see if he's as good on the X's and O's. He's good as the CEO of the program. I just talked about the importance of an associate head coach, the importance of a GM, how you're able to spend the money, how you're able to kind of call those X's and O's in big moments. There's so much that goes into college coaching. And so we're not going to have a definitive answer, but I do think that this is a really solid hire. It's one that the fans are going to react to. It's one that the boosters are going to react to. We'll see. I would assume that he's going to get really good backing, particularly in year one. They're going to try to get this thing off to a blazing start, kind of as a look what you left to Will Wade. If we're being honest, that's going to be part of it. You might have fired up this fan base to back their next head coach even more. And so to have that coach be someone who's close to their hearts already is going to be really fascinating to watch play out. And we'll see. But I do like this hire. I think it's a really solid one. It's the most logical next step. They obviously made a run at Josh Schertz. That one seemed like it was going to be very difficult to pull off, just signing an extension at St. Louis anyways. So I think this is a really solid hire, and interested to see what he does with the resources he's provided at NC State. Taking that one seat over, it's a big leap, but to take over as head coach from assistant coach, now he is going to get his chance to run a program.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. Jay Lucas, first-time head coach, had a lot of success in year one at Miami, of course. Justin Gainey looking to do something similar to what Miami has accomplished this year. So we'll be tracking it very closely. I'm sure we'll have more reaction on what NC State's next steps are as Justin Gainey takes over as head coach for Will Wade after his lone season over there with the Wolfpack. Quite the drama that played out this weekend. But James Fletcher, we know you're there to cover it all for us at On3. We appreciate your time this morning, and good luck on a busy day in hoops.
Appreciate it. Happy to come on.
There he goes. James Fletcher joining us here on All Access AM. He certainly has his busy day going already now with that news breaking and just coming out. And we are going to have Trevor Haas, who covers Boston College, join the show here in just a moment. We'll talk about Luke Murray. We'll talk about what he brings. We'll get a spring football update, all of those things. But before we get to Trevor Haas over there in Boston, we are going to remind you guys, of course, about our friends at Sportsmo. And Sportsmo is a game-changing app for those of you who have teams in the Final Four, whether it be men's or women's. You can still impact your program today. And you can make your micro donations to support your programs and make sure they are well-funded and in place to go do some serious work. You can load up your wallet for the offseason as well, so they know what they're going to get from you when you do end up making your micro donations to whatever avenue you want to in the sports world. So make sure you check out the Sportsmo app. Download it today, one of the fastest growing apps in the NIL space.
College basketball hits different with Sportsmo. You tap, they score. You pledge, they drop a 3. You give as a group, they win as a team. At this point, you're not watching a game, you're in it. Download the app, fund your wallet, and get in the game. Download Sportsmo. Power the play.
And Trevor Haas jumping on here in just a moment where he will chat about Luke Murray getting hired. He's got a busy day, I'm sure, around that as a new staff is coming to Boston College. And just actually, of course, Google delivers the news. I know I was talking about it earlier on the show. Luke Murray will stay through the NCAA tournament with the Huskies. So he will be headed to Indianapolis where he will get a chance to coach in another Final Four, another potential national championship. And here's the thing I will say about this. The timing cannot be more perfect if you're Luke Murray in Boston College. And the reason is because, one, even if UConn was bounced, that shot doesn't fall, whatever, Luke Murray's going to the Final Four because the Final Four is essentially your basketball world's networking. It is the spot where you are going to get all of that networking done with assistant coaches, with agents, with all of those things. And so he's going to have to be there anyway. I'm sure Dan Hurley will have a plan for how he's going to go about, whether it be scouting or whether it be this, whether it be that. Basically, all the roster moves and all of the roster planning for Luke Murray just immediately comes off of his plate, if you think about it. And now he's got to be working with his own new roster and trying to figure out, okay, let's start looking at the roster. What does that look like from a long-term perspective? What does it look like from a short-term perspective? What are some of the things that the athletic department is telling me about retention and making those moves and things like that? That is all what Luke Murray is going to have to dive into while also being in Indy for the Final Four. And for more on what is next for Luke Murray and this new Boston College head coach, we bring in Trevor Haas, who covers the program for us up there for the Globe. And we're excited to have him on with us. We had him on in football season. And Trevor, it is a busy time of year. What's up, Trevor?
How you doing?
Good, good. It is that crazy time where you get a new coaching staff to cover. What was this process like following it as Earl Grant was let go and the moves that BC was looking to make and go ahead and prioritize in its new head coach?
You're allowed one. What's up, Trevor? So you got it out of the way. So good job.
Yeah, I know. A first one, I'm sure, right?
Yep. No, you're more than allowed to do one. I accept. But yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks. I mean, I think, people kind of realized that Earl Grant kind of had to go. He was a great guy. I enjoyed covering him. And I thought he had some strong attributes as a coach. I think he was a great defensive coach, good recruiter, really personable, and players like playing for him. So I think he did have some positive attributes. But the offense just wasn't where it needs to be. And the record obviously was, speaks for itself. They were 72-92 under him. So that kind of, I don't need to say anything else about that. That is 72-92. So there it is. So I think it was time. I think it was the right choice. I think that, people realize that they could take it in a lot of different directions. You could take a national guy, you could take a local guy, you could take a guy who went to BC, take a guy who didn't go to BC, lots of avenues. And I think they honestly ended up with as good of a candidate as they could have, personally. I think it was a really great hire. Luke Murray is one at the highest level at UConn as an assistant. He has local ties. It doesn't hurt that his father is Bill Murray, so that's kind of cool. I think it was a great choice, and I truly think that he's ready for the job, and I think he'll do a great job. So I really think that after all this, they did make a great hire. We'll see. It's a tough job, and we know that. We understand that BC doesn't have the same resources as Duke, UNC, Louisville, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that he has as good a chance of anyone as revitalizing the program. So we shall see what happens, but I like the choice.
And you get somebody who's been at a few different spots. He's now been with UConn for a minute now, as he has learned under one of the best coaches in college basketball, one of the most demanding coaches in college basketball. When you dive into Luke Murray and kind of seeing a little bit about his path and his journey, what stands out to you?
Yeah, at least he's had a lot of stops. I mean, people know about UConn, and that's obviously his biggest stop and the one where he's had the most success. But just looking at how he's been at Quinnipiac, Post, Arizona, Wagner, Towson, Rhode Island, Xavier, Louisville, UConn. That's a lot. That's a long time. He put in his dues. That's almost 20 years of coaching. A lot of it with Dan Hurley. So he's seen it all. And I think what's key in this case is that he's been at Quinnipiac and Rhode Island. So I think he has a lot of New England ties. I think that does help a long way, and he has relationships all over the country, but particularly here in New England. So I think that's most important, is that he's done it. He's won in this area. I mean, UConn is UConn. We all know it's a national program, but it is only a couple hours from Boston College. So if you can win in the Northeast there, I mean, in theory, why can't you at BC? Obviously, a lot has changed over the decades for these teams, and UConn's now UConn. But theoretically, if you can win in the Northeast there, I mean, why not at BC? So I think that's kind of their logic, is let's get someone who's done it at this level in this area and see if you can kind of replicate that. And if they can get half the success UConn's had, I think they'll be more than happy. So that's kind of their logic in my eyes.
What is the first couple things he has to do on his list as he becomes the next head coach of BC? I mean, obviously the portal is looming here, but this has to be a press conference that gets the people going a little bit. I feel like to try and raise that extra few bucks to make an impact in year one.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot of buzz around BC basketball right now. I mean, it's always been a hockey school, but I think you look at the big picture state of the program, and it's kind of sad what it's become, truthfully. I mean, people in Boston love basketball. I think it's the kind of situation where if you have a good team, people will start caring immediately. Like if you get 20, 25 wins, people are all of a sudden coming off their couch and coming to games. They see Bill Murray in the stands. They see other celebrities in the stands, like people who are former college players are coming out to watch their team. I think the alumni will get a lot more invested. So I think it's just a situation where winning really does cure everything. It's kind of a panacea in this case. So I think that, it's going to take some time. I don't expect it to happen right away, but I think that there's a better chance that it will happen than there was under Earl Grant. So, and to give Earl Grant credit, he did have one good season with Quinton Post. They made the NIT a couple years ago, so people shouldn't forget about that. It did happen, but I think now the program has a better chance of reaching that status with Murray. So I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
Let's switch over to football real quick, because I do want to get your take on spring ball. Where's it at? What's the temperature up there heading into another year under Bill O'Brien?
Yeah, so it's basically an entirely new team. It's literally half of the roster is new, maybe slightly more. I have to check the exact number, but it's about half, if not a little bit more. So kind of insane. They kind of realized, all right, we were 2-10, it didn't work. Whatever we were doing, let's kind of start fresh and just look at this big picture. We need to change things. So I give them credit for doing that. It can be hard to rip the Band-Aid off and kind of realize that you're not good enough. So give them credit, first of all. but now it obviously has to work. So I think they have some pieces. I think they will be better defensively than last year. I'm pretty confident in that. Their defense had a ton of injuries, so that was definitely a big factor, but certainly did not play up to its potential. Was one of the worst in the ACC, if not the worst. So I would expect the defense to take a step forward. The offense is kind of a TBD. We don't really know. So it's Mason McKenzie or Grayson Wilson. So they have another potentially backup Grayson, which is kind of funny at quarterback. So I think McKenzie will probably get the job. He's a D2 transfer who started at Saginaw Valley State. Dual threat kind of guy who moves pretty well, can throw the ball, but he needs to work on his accuracy from what I've seen so far in spring, but he throws a good ball. So I'd expect him to start. And they have a running back, Evan Dickens from Liberty, who put up huge stats last year. I think he'll have a huge year at BC. I think he is capable of making the jump. And I think the O-line is a bit better than last year too. So it's just about, can the passing game kind of step up and, compensate for what they lack in other areas, for what they lacked last year, and can it kind of match that run game and that potentially improved defense. So I think they're going to kind of be lower scoring games, maybe like a 2017 kind of deal on average, or 24-21, something like that. I think the defense is better. So they were in close games last year and they couldn't really win them. So if they can kind of keep it close and lean on their defense, they could be better. But I'm expecting kind of a 4-5, maybe 6 max win deal. I don't think it'll be 2 again. That would be pretty shocking if it were 2, but I don't think they're magically going to be 9-3 this year. So it'll be somewhere in the middle of the pack, like the program has been most of the years in recent history. So I think that's kind of where they're at right now.
What has to happen for them to maybe be the surprise team of the ACC? What comes together for BC if that happens?
Yeah, I think they need to lean on the roots. I think it's the run game, really, with Dickens and the O-line. They have some other good players there, too. I think they need to kind of get back to that tough mentality where they don't take no for an answer and they just beat teams up with their physicality and size. The O-line has honestly looked pretty good. They have this guy, Christian Phillips, who played at Michigan State, who's kind of leading the way. He's been awesome. I think they have a pretty solid unit overall. So I think that if they are good, it will be because the O-line is dominant, and then they obviously can sprinkle in some passes once you expect the run opens up the passing game and vice versa. So I think that their versatility offensively would be important if they're able to do that. And then defensively, I think it's just, not giving up chunk plays. It's kind of the same for them every year in every football team at every level. But I think for them, it's really most important is just, it was happening under Hafley too. And then it didn't happen much in O'Brien's first year, but it did last year, where they were kind of, other teams would be in 3rd and long situations. And all of a sudden you look up and they get 27 yards. Like, where did this come from? So it's just kind of preventing those plays and giving your offense a chance to win the game. So I think that those things need to happen. And if they do, they'll be decent. If not, probably not. So who knows?
Trevor, we appreciate the down and dirty on all things BC. We appreciate it. And good luck with the new coaching staff over there for the Eagles.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
There he goes. Trevor Haas covering Boston College, all things BC for us there on All Access AM. We appreciate him for stopping in with us on the show today, and he does a great job. So give him a follow on Twitter as well, and show him some love at Trevor Haas. So as we roll on here on All Access AM, we do have a few more things to get to, of course, from the weekend. But one thing we've got to touch on now, with NC State having their job filled, now with Syracuse having their job filled, now with Boston College having their job filled, there's one remaining job open, and it is North Carolina in the ACC. Major opportunity here for somebody to take this job and turn it back into the program that it wants to be, that it was really wanting to get back to, that Hubert Davis delivered in the first year. But they've fallen on tough times. They've not established themselves as a good enough basketball program in the ACC as of late. They're still going after some big fish. Those big fish are facing off Saturday in the Final Four. Tommy Lloyd and Dusty May, 2 of the hot names in this coaching search. But when you look at this duo, I do wonder why you would leave what you have currently set up. Now, it is Carolina. They value basketball over really the way Michigan probably values football in this sense. And I would argue that Arizona probably values football in this sense, because football for Arizona has to be the vehicle that they end up in a better position for future conference realignment, I would think, right? Both of those come with incredible caveats as far as how they could go out and get them. Tommy Lloyd has an $11 million buyout, which allegedly drops to $9 million on April 1st. So UNC, their boosters, I'm sure they would love to pay that. They would love to get somebody like Tommy Lloyd, who was an assistant for Mark Few, who's a good friend with Roy Williams and was an established assistant there for him at Gonzaga. This, of course, would be a perfect fit. He's not that old, not that young, somebody who's been a really, really strong coach and has Arizona, of course, to a Final Four now. And then Dusty May, who has just done an unbelievable job in 2 years for Michigan and earning a number 1 seed. And here's the thing. Dusty May coached Tar Heel legend and assistant coach Sean May in high school as well. And so that is something to keep an eye on there as well. So they do have some ties. They do have a more reasonable buyout in the $7 million range. And of course, whoever UNC hires, I think, especially if they're established head coach, they're going to hire somebody who's going to reset the coaching salary market. I think that's what they're going to have to do to get somebody like that to come over. I think they're going to have to make that type of a splash. That's why they moved on from Hubert Davis. That's why they're pouring in all of these resources to this. The wild card for North Carolina basketball is Billy Donovan. Will he leave Chicago? He's been, of course, a national championship winning head coach at Florida, and he's led Oklahoma City, now Chicago. And of course, he's only still 60 years old, 60 years young. He just looks a little different than he did back then when he was coaching up Florida to national championships. He is a name that there are various levels of interest being discussed on Inside Carolina, our On3 affiliate that covers the Tar Heels. But it seems like he is in the mix at least. Can he be lured out of the NBA back to college hoops? That'll be something to really, really watch. And of course, you would have somebody who would have an incredible resume coming to Chapel Hill, if that makes sense. Among the other names that you've got to watch and circle, Mark Byington at Vanderbilt. He's done an awesome job there. Grant McCaslin at Texas Tech is somebody who I think is one of the best true coaches in the country. Ben McCollum at Iowa. Could you go and get him? I think if you're looking for a true kind of who's the next Dusty May, who's the next, not Tommy Lloyd because it's different paths, but Ben McCollum has won everywhere he's been. I think if Carolina made that move, you're looking at somebody who could take this program, be there for 20 years, win, and I think would capture another national championship for the program. That's me. So I'm intrigued to see where they go, but North Carolina still open, still keeping a close eye on that job, as of course, that could be another moment where we see this program or this coaching carousel be shaken up by this program, North Carolina. Can we see a landscape altering deal to come together that then opens up another job, that opens up another job, and we see the dominoes like we saw about 2 years ago when we had Andy Enfield and Eric Musselman and John Calipari and that whole crew moving around, and Mark Pope, of course, moving around the country. So we are going to be obviously tuned in very, very closely to what happens with North Carolina as they continue to evaluate their options. And we want you guys to continue to evaluate your options when it comes to our friends at Corporate Magic. CorporateMagic.com is where you can find more information about what they can do for you in the corporate event space, whether it be game-changing events that are seen by millions around the globe, or whether it be national sales meetings or other types of events that you need precision, you need great planning, you need all of those things that our friends at Corporate Magic deliver. They have decades of experience. They do it at an incredibly high level, and they will plan it for you. They will develop the execution, and then they will go out and knock it out of the park. So make sure you visit corporatemagic.com for more information on how they can help you transform your next event into one that is an everlasting memory for you, your constituents, your fans, all of those things. So visit corporatemagic.com to learn more today. The transfer portal window opens April 7th, and college basketball teams around the country are going to be, seeing those visits they've been planning, seeing those players that they've maybe been able to recruit, seeing all of those things come together for them in this time of year. But the transfer portal window does open on the 7th. And Jerry Morphew, of course, friend of the show, asks, are you aware of any targets SMU has for the transfer basketball team? I am aware of some targets SMU has for the basketball team, but I will say this, like many other programs across the country, those targets are not targets until they enter the transfer portal. That is the wild thing about where we're at in college athletics is you have these contracts that are signed, of course, and these players are getting recruited back to their schools. Retention efforts are in play for programs across the country. And until that player enters the portal, of course, you can't have direct dialogue with that player. There are agents that are shopping their players. There are agents that are getting a feel for what the market would be for their players. And it's on coaching staffs around the country, including SMU's, to then go out and determine what the value is, what makes sense, and where they can best fit into their system, and then go out and recruit them in this little vacuum of a window that basically doesn't start April 7th, but that's when the portal window opens. We're going to see 1,000+ players enter on day one. It's going to be chaos. We're going to see players that are going to be lined up for visits that day all over the country. And I'm sure SMU is no different in that regard. So it is going to be so interesting to see what the targets are once they enter the portal. But yes, I've heard about some targets. I have heard that some of them are not in the portal yet. That's why you're seeing teams across the country have that type of a situation going on. They're getting told, oh yeah, so-and-so is going to enter the portal, or so-and-so is going to enter the portal. And hey, here's what we're thinking. And these are these agents that are doing this all across the country. It's not a secret. And you still have to sit there and evaluate, okay, what if he doesn't enter though? What if this is all a ploy? What if this is a ploy to get more money out of their current school? What if this is a push to get them to, visit one school to then play it off of the other school? I mean, there's no rules for these agents. There's no rules for, of course, the whole just environment that college basketball goes into. And just like football, it needs to be fixed. There has to be some sort of, not regulation, but some sort of rules that we could sit back and say, okay, cool. Now this makes sense. We can sign multi-year contracts. They actually mean something. We can do this. We can do that. I actually didn't hate the Big Ten's idea around kind of a bird rights where you could go over your revenue share to re-sign a player, which, I mean, you can see how that would get out of hand as well. But I love the idea or the unique play to have some sort of way to work in a little bit more, let's say, consistency in teams, which would, I think, help the college basketball space more than anything. But nonetheless, I mean, SMU and all these other teams, they have transfer targets. They have a board. They're hearing this, they're hearing that. But until that transfer goes into the portal, they can't really do anything. And that's something we'll have to talk about across the transfer portal world once that does take off. So great question, Jerry. And thanks for allowing me to answer it. Not really as well as I can because of all the things that come with transfer portal recruiting, but hope you know that next week around this time, maybe on the Wednesday show for sure, we'll be chatting it up about all sorts of transfers going into the portal and visits being set and all those things in the college basketball space. So we're excited about that. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Those of you in the chat, please hit the subscribe button to All Access AM. We continue to grow. We are continuing to see our subscribers kind of take off. So we appreciate all of you guys, even in the off season, that are hitting that subscribe button to our YouTube channel, All Access AM. And speaking of those subscribing to our friends at Tiger Illustrated over on the Clemson side of things here at On3 are getting a ton of great notes from the spring game this weekend. I want to touch on a couple of key takeaways I have from it. For Clemson, their quarterback situation is going to be one that I think is going to play out into the fall. I think it's trending towards having some sort of drama with it. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just think they're going to have to play two quarterbacks to figure this out. And I think, of course, when you have three that were even rumored to be in the mix, you're going to see one of those players probably redshirt and leave, I would imagine. And that's not unique to Clemson. Jamal Anderson, linebacker, they're redshirted and left the program earlier this year and transferred to SMU. But when you see the spring game and you see a huge gap between Christopher Vizina and Tate Reynolds, who our friend Larry Williams mentioned when we had him on earlier this month, and you see Dabo Swinney commentating the spring game and being on the mic and, and then not really having much to say when Chris Denson even got in there in the second half. That's a jarring disparity between the top two in the quarterback battle with Christopher Vezina and Tate Reynolds to where Chris Denson is. And Chris Denson is the guy that was probably going to have a little bit more, let's say, dual threat ability that might fit into that offense a little bit more. And this is going to be fascinating to see how it plays out, to see if they can keep Chris Denson engaged with the program. And I just say that because, look, Chris Denson got time at times with Clemson last year on the field, as Kate Klubnik was injured and things like that. And so for Tate Reynolds to come in and roll early and make that big of a move, one, speaks to his game and where it's headed. But man, Brock Bradley even got in before. Trent Pierman got in before, but he got in like as a fifth quarterback, which is just astounding. So it's really been a fall in a sense from Chris Denson. Maybe it's just a Chad Morris thing. Maybe it just doesn't work for Chad Morris, what he's seeing from Chris Denson. But that is a little bit of a shocking development in a sense still, with just how big of a gap there is there. So heading into the fall, as Clemson is now wrapped up, you got April, May, June, July until they're back on the field. There is that gap between Christopher Vezina, Tate Reynolds, to Chris Denson, Brock Bradley, Trent Pierman, those quarterbacks. And it's shaping up to be a two-headed attack as far as the quarterback position. I just don't think Christopher Vezina, when you're heading into Tiger Stadium down at LSU for that season opener, is going to be the only quarterback that plays. I see Chad Morris playing both of those players. And I think Chad Morris, as somebody who knows Chad Morris, knows how he thinks, knows how he works, if you're giving him a little bit of a leash here with the deal that he signed, with the situation that Dabo Swinney is in, man, go to your freshman. Because from what this tells me, it tells me a couple things when you break it down between Christopher Vezina and Tate Reynolds. Christopher Vezina is a big kid, big arm, all of those things. Tate Reynolds has come in and made such a push that he's in it. He's right in the mix. And I just think that says a lot about what they feel about him long term. And it wouldn't shock me if that means he ends up seeing a lot more time earlier in the season than people think. The Clemson secondary was able to feast a little bit in the spring, where that is something that has been a big development because they brought in so many transfers. Elliott Washington, Penn State transfer, is among those. But it is a quarterback situation that still needs to clean up some of their mistakes. They threw a lot of interceptions in the spring, but they're facing a revamped secondary, a defense that's feeling some type of way as they get deeper into the Tom Allen era of Clemson. And if you're going to be a team that can't necessarily run the ball, like we'll see, that's something that's going to have to wait and see, because if they're just throwing the rock around, there's going to be more of that in the season. So Clemson has to develop that run game to help these quarterbacks out, especially if neither one is going to separate themselves so much so early in the fall. That'll be something to really, really watch closely. So we will keep an eye on that, but the quarterback battle at Clemson will play out into the fall. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So look, everybody, we appreciate you guys listening to this Monday edition of All Access AM. Packed it with plenty of coaching news, NCAA tournament, and more. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Monday edition of the show. As all we got for you guys today, please hit the subscribe button. Please support our sponsors, Security National Bank, Sportsmo, and Corporate Magic. Check out their information in the podcast episode description below. And we will see you guys Wednesday morning, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time on All Access AM. Appreciate you guys watching. I'm Billy Embody. We'll catch you next time.